is part of the issues with writing screenplays is that you have to look at the visual aspect of it, but you still have to be able to tell a cogent and a compelling story.
Lights on the set, the director's late. The cameraman sneezes, oh what a fate. The coffee spilled, the script's all wet. But darling, we ain't started shooting yet. Actors rehearsing with lines gone astray, improvising words like it's Broadway's play. The boom mic drops in a hilarious dive, but somehow the scene comes out alive. Oh, lights on the set.
I want to say welcome back to the Anecdotes video podcast. And today we have a wonderful guest. We're going to be talking about writing for script and writing in general, I guess, with Mr. AJ Leitell. AJ.
Hi, how's it going?
Okay, Mr. Radio Voice, right away.
I did the radio voice.
Well, thank you for coming all the way out here, from the best bank to the North Shore.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad of a drive because it was early afternoon. Yeah.
Well, people want to hear, about, like I said, we cover a lot of topics, filmmaking style topics, acting, whatever, producing, editing. I still got a lot more to go here, but I haven't heard very many people talk about writing, and that's why I wanted to have you here and tell us a little bit about, say, your process, your thought process when you're trying to write a script.
A lot of that depends on what I'm doing it for.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
So you have your personal projects or a 48, totally different. Yeah.
My personal projects, I've got two features that I am in the process. One of them is in its first edit.
Okay.
And the other one is not done yet. So that's, yeah. So,
right, wow.
But I know the whole story. The whole story's up here. It's just you have to, type it.
Type it and get it down on paper. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the key right there.
Okay. How many pages is the one that's...
The one that's completed is 145 pages.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
a lot.
It's way too much.
Yeah.
So, but, I talk a lot anyway, so it's just me putting all that down. Because once it's down, then I can go in and I can pull out the juicy parts, the stuff that, because film being a visual medium, you want to be able to show more than you tell.
Yes.
Yeah, exposition is a killer. And exposition is when you write what is happening, instead of showing what is happening.
Exactly. I know in a novel, you're writing, people are reading the pages, there you can have written out an inner dialogue and an explanation of what's going on. And then the captain strode onto the deck, wearing a resplendent blue uniform with shiny gold buttons. Okay, great. You're just setting the scene, but we don't really need that.
Yeah. And that is part of the issues with writing screenplays is that you have to look at the visual aspect of it, but you still have to be able to tell a cogent and a compelling story. Because, we are so, especially in the 2020s, we don't give anything any time. If it's boring in the first 5 seconds, there's 30 other things you could be watching on your streaming services. And I say on the streaming services because people are not going to the movie theater nearly as much as they used to. About 8 years ago, I lived in the Mid-Hudson Valley in New York, and I had Mondays off. And I was by myself, so I would go to the movie theater on Monday, and I would see 2 or 3 movies.
Oh, you could definitely do that easy on a Monday afternoon.
Yeah, and they always opened at 11 on Mondays, so I could get 2 in, have lunch, and then, by the way, I don't recommend movie theater food for lunch. it made the last 2 movies not all that fun, but it was a learning process.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that, you need to have that story that captures the audience as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they will turn it off. And those that are actually written well and get your attention, you stick with. I have a quick experience that happened about a week ago. I was looking for something to watch on the streaming services, and I found something that piqued my interest just because of the topic. Air Force test pilots.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Let's watch that. It's gonna be fun, actiony, flying. It was Chinese.
Oh.
It was recently made, Into the Sky, I think it was called, or something like that. And basically, it was the People's Republic of China version of Top Gun, but with test pilots and their new J-36 stealth fighter, which looked like our F-36 stealth fighter. Whatever. And it was what got me as soon as I started watching it. My first thoughts were, okay, this is a ripoff of Top Gun. Why am I watching it? Okay, whatever. The effects were good. The story was actually interesting, and I stuck through for the whole scene. There was a lot of characters in there that I really liked, that were compelling, that were somebody I'd want to have lunch with if I knew how to speak Chinese, and
Yeah.
but it was great. I didn't like the propaganda aspect of it, and there was a lot of that in there. The bad guys were all basically Caucasians
Yeah.
and coming from the East, so I wonder where that come from. But I enjoyed it. It was a thoroughly fun film.
Yeah, that's the key right there. Is you gotta be able to bring them in, and then once you bring them in, you don't want to cheat.
No,
Okay,
No.
because once you've got them in, you don't want them to go, oh man, that's terrible.
exactly.
And I have recently, I've been watching a lot of episodic television, and I have to suspend belief while watching it because a lot of episodic television is just people making bad decisions.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing in a nutshell. Is there are people who are making bad decisions. I recently have been watching a TV series, Suits. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yes.
that or not. That starts the first episode with three people making bad decisions. The first episode, and it went on for another 7 years, 8 years, 11, something like that.
Yeah,
And then they got a sequel. They moved to L.A.
Suits LA. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the same decisions being made, the same concept. For Suits, for example, I did enjoy the concept of that story. Here's a kid who has a photographic memory, eidetic memory, or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
And so he knows all the law books. He just doesn't have the experience of utilizing it.
Right.
He knows the information, but has to figure out how to put it together. And I'm like, okay, great. So he can't be found out. Okay, cool. So he's got to go around and help all these people do their thing without getting found out. Great idea. And then a few years into that series, okay, everybody found out about it. We're going to move on to something
Yeah.
else. You destroyed the whole premise of the show.
Right. Well, it's actually the hero's journey. Because he was an orphan, raised by an old person,
Yep.
and he was brought into something different to learn a new way of living. He's Luke Skywalker. He's Harry Potter. That's
Yeah,
that's
you're right.
basically it. He
You're
has a
right.
special talent, and it's innate to him because Luke Skywalker had the Force being so strong in him. Harry Potter was a magician and didn't know he was a wizard until Hagrid said, "You're a wizard, Harry." That was it. But all over the place, if you can see that I call it a trope, but you can see that hero's journey, that brings people in. And as long as you have the hero's journey bring you to a satisfactory conclusion where the hero is redeemed, because it's always an arc. It's the hero is young and he's learning, and then he becomes the journeyman, so to speak. And then that will cause him to have something happen, or a bad decision that he made will cause him to falter, and he will fail. And he will have to become the hero at that point to save himself, and whatever the situation is, he has to be the hero of that situation. And that's at the very simplest of it. I mean, there's books written on this, and you talk about writing. One of the first books I ever read about writing was Stephen King on writing.
Okay.
If you're going to write, a lot of people say, well, yeah, but he's just, it's bubblegum fiction. It's Stephen King writes from a visual standpoint, which is why it's so easy to make films out of his novels and novellas. And some of the best stories people have ever seen are Stephen King stories. Shawshank Redemption, that's a Stephen King story. Yeah, I just watched today, this morning. I watched The Mist. That was a short story.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They shot that in Shreveport.
Oh, did they?
Yes, they did. My eye, because I've worked background for so long that I'm always watching other stuff in the scene besides the main characters. Fire truck goes by and it says Caddo Parish.
There you go.
They're supposed to be in Maine. They don't have parishes in Maine.
Well, it was a church fire department. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but I like that. Using Stephen King's book. Now he is a novelist, but you're right. Like you said, he's a very visual storyteller.
Yes.
And I read The Stand. And
which version? The unedited version.
The first
one that came out. It was cut down to like 800 pages.
Yeah, that's the one that I read, not the unedited. And
I read both of them.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, when I was a teenager, I worked at Walden Books in the Plaza in Lake Forest.
Okay.
So I had access to books, a lot of books.
And you were able to read them, and that's like fantastic. I love it.
It was.
I mean, but what was the difference between the unedited version and
it told more story about some of the characters. It gave a lot more background for the characters. I mean, backstory in film, you got to show it fast.
Right.
Okay, but in a novel, you can take as much time as you want. You could take somebody who is, who's 40 years old, and you can say, this guy is this way because at the age of 2, this happened. At the age of 5, this happened. And you can tell his whole story.
Right, and it can be an entire chapter of just that backstory, and you're fine reading it because you can pick up the story. I can see you doing that in a film, and it's like, okay, for the first 15 minutes, you're looking at this guy getting his diapers changed.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that got to do with it? You lose interest.
Right.
And it's a matter of the different media changes the way you're going to perceive and accept that story.
I use a device that I've seen. Actually, the person who really introduced this to me was Seth MacFarlane.
Okay.
Created Family Guy. Mm-hmm. Family Guy does cutaways. Okay,
Yes,
they do cutaways. Yeah. But what I figured out was that you could do a cutaway to a flashback and come right back. You say, "Do you remember when that happened?" Boom. Or you can say, "Yeah, the character says, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that." And instead of going into the whole thing about him saying exposition why he doesn't think you want to do that, you go to a 45-second or 1-minute scene, and you see this person in a different place at a different time, learning why he doesn't want to do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's an easy way of kind of getting that information out there. There are a lot of other ways to do it, but you do, like I said, film. You said, I say too. It's a visual medium. I mean, you guys are looking at me right now, and looking at AJ and looking at everything that's right. So you're picking up clues that are around the set. There's not much, the brick wall, the TV. It's not a big deal, but you're picking up clues about things that are going on, especially in a regular film.
Yeah.
An actor or a character in a film, if they act a certain way and it's consistent, let's say you have somebody who's walking down the street, somebody stops them asking for the time, and they snap at that person. Okay, well, that was weird. And then he walks down, he picks up, he gets a buys a newspaper at a newspaper stand, and he throws the money on the counter, and the guy says good day, and he's like, what is it to you or something, and walks off. Well, you don't know what happened to this guy. All you know is
Right.
that he, or this character, he or she is an irascible person. Something is ticking him off, and we don't know what. So now we're excited. We know a little bit about him. We don't know why. We don't have to know why. All we have to know is this is the way it is.
Right.
And and then you can continue with the story, because now you've kind of set up that character without saying anything.
Yeah.
And that helps. And I think that's one of the big takeaways when you're talking about writing for film is think about how you can get information out without having to just sit there and turn to the camera and explain, break the fourth wall and say,
Yeah.
hey, here we go. One of the things we talked about earlier was the difference between, well, I want to get back to the features and
Yeah.
how that is. But real quick, let's touch on how writing is different for, say, a short contest like the 48 or something like that.
It is probably full-blown panic mode. I hate to say that, but at the same time, it's something that I'm comfortable with. And a lot of people would say, well, how can you do that? And my answer is, since the second time I ever worked on a 48, I was the writer. The first time, I was the guy who pushed record on the sound recorder. That was it.
It's all right.
That was it. Well, I was also electrical lighting, and you have so many different hats. I carried a lot of stuff. I moved things around. I moved furniture. I did everything, but I was not. I didn't feel like I contributed enough to the final product. I feel like that was probably something I could have done better. I did get one little thing in there. I added when they were doing the this was a very strange group that I was with, because they did their pitch. They did the pitch of what the story was supposed to be, and they had a very young 18-year-old screenwriter, and she didn't have she wasn't meeting the concept. The requirement was film to femme.
Okay.
And the character in her original story commits suicide. Yeah. That was, so I said, well, why don't we have her maybe think about suicide or have something to do with suicide, and her find her strength to overcome what it is that's keeping her that way. And I got a story credit on the screen, because, everybody's name goes everywhere on the 48 credits.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we were nominated for a story for that year. We didn't win, but we were nominated. That was, I forget what year that was, 2017.
27. Wow, that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
A few years ago, 9 years ago.
And then 2018, I got with Bob Bennett. Mm-hmm. And Bob, God rest his soul, he was an angel. He really was, because he saw something in me that I wasn't sure I really had at that time. I had been working on one screenplay for about 6 years at that point, and it's the one that I've finished now.
Good.
Yeah, but Bob gave me he gave me the chance. He said, "I'm going to give you a chance to write this." Now I had to drive to New Roads and spend Friday night, writing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't terrible. I felt like it was a good, solid story, and it met the requirements, and I didn't have anything else really to do with it direction-wise, except for the fact that the director, who was very, very good technical director, he wasn't working with his characters and his actors. So my job became explaining each scene to the actors before they did it.
Yeah.
And I did something else that I got a art director credit on that, because I coordinated wardrobe with scenes, because the scenes were gonna be doing certain things. People were saying certain things. So wardrobe colors, wardrobe styles, and things of that nature
Okay.
were in there.
Yeah, well, the thing about like the script on for a 48,
Yeah.
the talent doesn't get it until, okay, we're going to be rolling in 5 minutes. Here's
Yeah.
your script, and it's very difficult to get a feel for how that story goes. If we were doing a non-timed project, then there would be a read through. Everybody sits around and
Yeah.
gets something to drink and sits around a table and reads the script all the way
Right.
through. And you get a feel for the characters. You get a feel for the emotions that are supposed to be happening and the information that you really want to kind of emote during these particular scenes. It's very difficult, but it's great having. I love having the writer there,
Yeah.
for those things because they can. Because even the director, okay, I'm reading through the script. Okay, okay.
What do I do here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to do this one first, this one second, just because of location. I need to,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how it all works, the technical side of it. Let somebody who knows the story, who just wrote it, explain it to us. I need it explained, at least scene by scene. Okay, well, you're really sad here because of this. Oh, I see. And you put and then the good talent to be able to pick up on that and run with it.
That was another thing is I had the advantage once I was with Bob's organization of working with really great talent. And I was surprised because I knew these people. I mean, I knew them from working background. Most of them had cut their teeth on being background actors.
Okay.
So they didn't do a lot of talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we brought in, we had 2 SAG-AFTRA actors on the first one that I worked on. And then we had one consistently, and maybe another one would come in every now and then, depending on what year it was and whether they were available or not. Okay. And I saw people step up to the plate and do things that were absolutely incredible. You didn't expect to see it. Because, you see this person every now and then, and this person is just, they're there, and then, when they're doing background work, it's always, okay, background, they start walking, or they're, pantomiming that they're talking or whatever, and then, it's cut back to one, and that's all you see of them in front of the camera.
Right.
And to see these people become animated, to become a character, that was absolutely amazing. That blew me away. I thought that was one of the most exciting things. And to see them become a character that I wrote
Yes.
was the best part of that.
Yes. And it really makes you feel good when you see, I wrote that, that's the way I wrote that, and that is,
Yes.
that is now alive. That is just so awesome. I mean, it's difficult to write. I definitely understand this, to write a 48, because you've got, just a few hours to get that idea. Now, everybody's pitching ideas to you, but like, find the one that's going to work, that fits the requirements, that fits the genre, that fits the character and what the character's job is. The name is not an issue usually, or the line you have to fit in a specific line of dialogue somewhere in there. It makes it very, very difficult.
It is,
and you need to be a lot more creative.
Interesting, to say the least. The second one I did for Bob Bennett was based on a story by our director. We had a fantastic director, Dustin Forrett.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's won a few things, and he now lives in New York. He's working on film crews in New York, I believe.
Okay.
But Dustin had an idea of what the story was he wanted to tell. He told me that story, and then I went home, and my wife Emily, she gave me some input on the story because she had a similar situation with her story.
Okay.
So we had 2 different stories, and my job was to write the screenplay. That was my job. That was the only thing that I needed to do, because we had a director, we had sound people, we had everything we could possibly need. And then, so I wrote the screenplay, and Dustin took the dialogue and he shot it the way he needed to shoot it, and that is all his film. That really is all his film. I feel like that the words I wrote were pretty much the only words that these characters could say in this film. So I didn't feel like it was a really a really creative thing for me, but it was an exercise that that contributed to me being able to complete things. Because sometimes I'll go down a rabbit hole in a character, and I'll want to show more about this character than is necessary.
And that's where, yeah, you do need your wife or,
Yeah.
or someone in there to help edit you, to help pull you back, rein you in.
Yeah.
Now, you said that this film was Dustin's film. I've heard it said, and I do believe it, that a film is written 3 times, once by the writer, once by the director when it's shot, and once by the editor.
Yes, and Dustin edited also.
Okay, well, there you go. So yes, it was his film.
Yeah.
How do you feel seeing your words and your story morphed, I guess is a better word to use there, by someone else, throwing their ideas in there?
I have a much more recent experience with that.
Okay.
The 48 for 2024, I wrote the screenplay, and that was it. I had to go to work the day that they were shooting. They were shooting in Baton Rouge. I work in Belle Chase. So there's no way I was going to...
Lasagna film?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Lasagna Rage. That was shot and directed and under control of people who had to translate what I wrote into what they had available. And they did a phenomenal job, but it was not the story I wrote. Because the story I wrote was gonna go in a slightly different direction. But they did a fantastic job on it. And I felt very good about the final product. I did edit the final product, but I took what they made and I created their story with it.
Well, I remember that film, and I liked it because it did tell a story.
Yeah.
And it was a complete beginning, middle, and end. Okay, and there were things in the beginning you weren't quite sure what was going on, but it all resolved, in that 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was really fun. But I remember you telling me that you had to go to work, and it's like, here, I'm writing this Friday night, but I got to go to bed. I got to go do the government's mission, and then that is hard. And then you get home from work on Sunday or whatever, or Saturday
night. I got home from work, and I didn't get any of the shots until early Sunday morning.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And did you have to work Sunday, or
I did not.
Okay, well, that's
I was
good.
Very, very happy about that.
Yes, but no sleep weekend there.
Yeah. Well,
that's the 48.
It's the 48. I had planned that, and the thing is that was different because it was done with an excellent camera person, an excellent director. We had everything that we needed. We had actors that were top notch. We really did.
Excellent. Yeah.
I was very happy with the actors. Overall, that's not something you can say on a 48.
No, it is difficult. Sometimes you take what you get.
Yeah.
And I know that I work a lot with Hunter and Lisa, and they love using their kids' acting class. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of our talent are the kids. This is their graduation film in the summer, basically, is what it is. So it's even though they're fun and it's great, it's still like, okay, can we maybe get someone who can do something just a little bit better? Not that they're bad. It's something a little bit different, and it's hard. But like when you're writing for the 48, you have a bunch of people, the team leads or whatever. Everybody has their required elements, and you're throwing at you, and so everybody's pitching ideas, and you're hearing all these different ideas until one pings, and then you start writing it. When you're writing your feature, the one that I want to hear more about that one right now. Mm-hmm. What would be the difference in how you came up with the idea for your feature versus these other?
It's a personal film.
Okay.
It's actually a fictionalized version of some of the things that happened with my father. My dad was a musician in the early 60s.
All right.
He was in high school and he was playing music, and when he graduated, he continued to play music in the mid 60s. He played trumpet in New Orleans.
All right.
Yeah. So he was in like 2 or 3 different bands, and he would go play. They were playing in clubs and things like that. And um, in 1965, he had his first child, me, and everything changed at that point because he could no longer be, just the guy who was going to go play music 3 nights a week. He had to bring in real income.
Right.
So he had to get a night job that paid regularly instead of gig work.
Right.
So he ended up giving up playing music because
Oh,
I
wow.
was born. And before he passed away, he did get back to it. He became a member of the New Orleans Musicians Association, and every year they would do a big party, and they would bring in every musician you could possibly think of that was a member of this organization, and they would have this big band, and they put together a whole bunch of different types of music. But my dad was there at the beginning of what I think is one of the most important parts of rock and roll. The early '60s in New Orleans, we had swamp pop, we had popular music. By the time the early '60s were there, we had Irma Thomas. These were all people who were performing
Right.
and regularly, and they were getting national recognition. So if my dad had stayed in that, he probably would not have stayed in New Orleans being a dental lab technician or later working part time at UPS. He probably would have done something entirely different. His life would have taken a very different trajectory. But instead, he was a very responsible person. So this story is basically about a man in his 40s who gets a phone call that his father is having trouble with Alzheimer's,
Okay.
and he has to go fly from Chicago down to New Orleans, and he goes into his mom and dad's house, and his mom's passed away already. But he gets in the house, and he's looking around, and he's just looking at all these different things that are from his childhood and things that he thought was one way and was a different way. And I took a slice out of the movie Midnight in Paris.
Okay.
Okay, where the main character in Midnight in Paris, he walks outside of the hotel, and there's always a car there waiting for him. And he steps in the car, and it takes him back to the Lost Generation in Paris. All of those writers and artists are all doing their thing in Paris at the time. What I did is, and people from New Orleans will love this, there's a K&B credit card that he finds in there. And it's got a Post-it note on it that's got his name and an address. So he takes it, and he goes to the address, and it's a courtyard entrance on Barrack Street in the French Quarter, and there's a swipe thing right there. So he swipes the card, and the door opens.
Interesting.
He walks in, and it's a courtyard. There's another swipe thing on the other side of the courtyard, and there's a door. So he walks over to that. He swipes it again. It opens up, and he walks out in 1962 New Orleans in the French Quarter.
Oh, wow. I like that. Okay. All right.
And that sets him up for being able to go back in time and see his father and hear his father play and see what an incredible musician he was. And he is able to reconcile a lot of the things that his father did and said that made him feel like he was not loved as a child.
Right.
But he actually was loved as a child. He was just the source of a lot of disappointment in his father because his father couldn't pursue that passion.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
And the
great story.
the I'm not going to tell the ending of it.
No.
There's
Yeah. Tell me the
there's
end.
a
No.
great there's a whole bunch of redemption. There's a whole bunch of redemption, and the one I'm working on now is also a redemption film too, and it's about because I had my 40th class reunion in 2023, and it's about people, these two men who were the closest of friends until they had a falling out their junior year, sort of the end of their junior year, and they never spoke. They never spoke again. and it's 41, 42 years later, and they meet it back up at this class reunion, and they go through everything, all the things that were the source of this issue, all the things that happened. And that's where I was talking about using cutaways and flashbacks. It's absolutely incredible how much you can tell of a story by just going, boom, this is happening. And then, okay, oh, I understand now. Go back to the present day. And he's like, yeah, that happened. And it works because it's a story about the past becoming the future.
Okay. I like this. I mean, like the story about your dad, I lost my dad a number of years ago, and there's stories that I tell about him. But if I was going to write a script about him, I think I could definitely do it easily, because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's close to me. It may be a totally fictional story, but all the elements are already there. They're already known. Just like with your dad, this is your story. You're writing in a different way. I mean, you don't really have the K&B credit card that gets you back to 62, but that's okay. But you can. But the ideas are there. They say write what you know, and it's going to come out. I totally agree with that, because it feels like, just you telling the story right here, it feels more real. It's not like, I mean, I love science fiction, but it's not like me saying, okay, then the Cylons came down and destroyed the Battlestar. But it's like, what are you talking about? But it's, 'cause that's just making it up as I go along, and it doesn't feel as real.
Yeah.
Star Wars, again, back to the science fiction.
Yeah.
I love science fiction. I'm sorry. Star Wars was fun, because Lucas, when he did the original Star Wars, it was based on the 1940s serials, and the fighter fights in space were based on the World War II movies that he saw growing up, and the lightsaber fights were based on the
samurais,
the samurais, and all the rest. And it's like, this is what he knew, this is what he saw, and he just kind of translate it, not try to make it totally new like a lot of people try to do. It's like, I'm walking the dog, and the dog decided to sit down and do something. Well, if you don't have experience as a dog walker, go find out what that experience is like before you write about it.
You were mentioning Lucas, when he showed the first cut of Star Wars, before all the special effects were done, the fighter sequences, he actually inserted the World War II and World War I dogfights in that section.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
I love that. There's a lot that he did that were that just made a lot of sense, and you're watching it. Yes, you're taken out of reality, because you're in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Great, and so now I'm in space, but you recognize the way fighters are banking and they don't do that in space.
No.
It's not realistic, but that's not what you're watching that for. That's the thing about people who like read a script or watch a film and they start critiquing it because, well, that's not real. Like, well, no, Superman can't fly either, but that was a fun movie.
Yeah.
It's like,
and if you're talking about just for pure entertainment value, because it's something we do need, you don't always have to write a movie that is absolutely tells a really important story. Sometimes the movie just has to tell a really fun story.
right.
When I wrote Strawjalafu, which was about the strawberry, well, actually, it was a jalapeno inside of what was it? Oh, tofu inside of a strawberry inside of a jalapeno. Okay, it's a snack food. We basically we were given choices of food film or mockumentary, so we made a mockumentary food film, and once again, everything came together so well in that film because our actors were so good. And I had the advantage of having a really good camera operator who actually I gave a co-director credit to because he helped so much with that. And I think he moved away. I think he moved back to Los Angeles.
Okay.
But he had a great camera, he had a great setup, and he had the patience to deal with people who. This something else about the 48 is it's class reunion time because
Yeah.
because we don't see each other, anymore. We don't see
Unless
each
it's-
other except that one day of the year.
Exactly.
And then maybe the award ceremonies afterwards. But after the awards are done, I don't see these people again till the next 48.
Well, I'm glad you're here now.
Oh, me too.
This is great.
Yeah,
This is fun. I like having conversation. I like talking, and
Yeah.
and it's so much. You do learn a lot, and it's just an enjoyable time. Now, one of the things that I've noticed with people today trying to write a film, write a script, is that they tend to think that if it's dramatic and very deep and heavy and dark, it's going to get a lot more play. Maybe, but it's those are also very easy to shoot because it's a lot of people sitting around and complaining about their lives or whatever they're doing.
yeah, moping and lamenting and hand wrenching and all that.
That's right, and people will see that and think, oh, this must be an important film because I don't understand it. I look back at an old film, 30s, 40s, Sullivan's Travels.
Okay,
I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've heard of it. I may have seen it.
It's a great film. It's about a film director who in Hollywood who makes all these comedies and musicals and just lighthearted entertainment, and is very upset because the depression's going on. And he's like, I need to make an important film about the depression, show how horrible conditions are. That's the film I need to do. And all his people, his managers and his producers and everything are saying, no, don't do that. We need this. Well, he goes on a journey as a hobo, and they follow him in a big, Winnebago or caravan at the time. It's like it's silly, but throughout his journeys, his travels, he gets arrested, gets mistaken identity, and put on a chain gang, and it's like, okay, this is what real life is all about, bud, and no one cares about you, no one knows who you are, and the scene that brings it all together was they get marched into this old Baptist church, and there's an old Baptist preacher, sitting there, and these bedraggled men in chains are being marched into this church, and the pastor is like, "Y'all get up, let these gentlemen have a bit of respite, have them sit down on the front row because we're going to be starting the film soon. They're going to play a movie," and they were invited. The prisoners were invited to watch, and they play the movie, and it's some cartoon. It's funny, and the prisoners start like chuckling, and then rolling on the floor laughing because it's so funny. It's the only entertainment and joy they have in their lives. And that's when the director, Sullivan, looks at it and goes, basically, well, making just entertainment
I
isn't
get
bad.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
And it isn't. I mean, there are places for a good documentary or a good dark film or story that doesn't have a traditional ending,
Right.
But there's also a lot more places. We need to have more enjoyment, the escapism, I think, at times. I want to turn on something and watch it because it's fun.
Yeah.
The Chinese movie, it was propaganda, pure and simple, but it was fun. I enjoyed it.
And that is key to a lot of the things is if you didn't take anything important out of it, did you at least have a good time?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not wasting my hour and a half.
Right.
I'm okay. This is a good time.
Yeah.
Same thing about a lot of old Soviet films. A lot of communist propaganda in that, but some of them are really cool. Really, like, okay, this is fun.
Yeah.
But you're writing that. You got to think about your audience. Who is your audience? Well, the first audience is yourself.
Right.
So you're writing for yourself. You're writing something. Writing that gets you excited. I started writing a script. I want it to be feature length, and I'm still working on it. My problem is that I stopped getting excited about the story, and so I kind of put it away for a while. And then and I think about it every now and then, but I got to wait for that spark to come back. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. I mean, how do you handle that?
ADHD. I told you I'm working on two features, and
Right, yeah.
I am part of two different groups. One of them is a weekly writing group. It's called Write or Die.
Okay, I've heard of that. Yeah.
We meet on Sunday mornings at a coffee shop in New Orleans, and we sit in the coffee shop, and at 10 o'clock, there's a big, huge timer. It's, it's just,
timer, yeah.
yeah, and we turn it over, and it's an hour timer, and from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, nobody says a word at this table, and people come and go to this group. I missed it 2 weeks ago because I had something else going on, and I went this week, and we start out before we start at 10 o'clock. Everybody introduces themselves and says something about what they're planning on writing.
Okay.
And then at the end of it, we'll take like a quick group picture of everybody who attended that day, and then we'll talk about what we worked on if we need to. And I have found that over time, a lot of the people that come to this event on a regular basis are writing regularly. Some months the only time I get to write is on Sunday mornings, because I have a lot of other responsibilities. I'm going through a lot of other things. I have so many different things to do that sometimes to sit down in front of a laptop with no distractions is very difficult. But it's much easier for me to do that when I know everybody else is doing the same thing I'm doing, and we hold each other accountable.
That's good.
Just by being there, we're holding each other accountable.
And what do you do with that writing?
I'm working on a screenplay, or I'm working on character development, or it's all part of
something that you're working on.
It's part of producing. I gave myself this past weekend. I gave myself an hour to attempt to do a 48. So I got 4 pages done.
Oh, wow.
In an hour. That felt very satisfactory. I would probably be able to tell the story in 7 pages, probably. But that would be the first edit. So it probably would come in at about 5.5 or 6 minutes by the time I got everything cleaned up. And it was a very simple story. I mean, it's basically. I'm very, very much about redemption stories. It's about somebody who's worked in a particular field with a particular person as that person's assistant for a very long time, and is now moving on because they found a position where they're going to be the person who has the assistant in a different company.
Okay.
And their job is to train their replacement. And in going through the training, they realize how important it was that they were there at the place that they were for all those many years, because every time something came up in the training, it was something that triggered a memory that, oh boy, I remember that. I didn't realize this, but what I did there, it had a positive or a negative effect. It changed what we do. And
okay, yeah,
and that's that to me that's an important thing to remember sometimes is when you put something aside, it's always going to be a part of you. A lot of people don't see that. They don't see, well, I'm here now. All that stuff I did in the past doesn't mean anything. Everything you did in the past brought you to where you are.
That's right. Yeah.
And I guess that's why I'm like I said, I do a lot of things with flashbacks and things like that, because that's the kind of stories that I see, and it may have something to do with the fact that I'm turning 60 this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the past and all the things that I've done that brought me to this point.
Well, I've stopped looking at age because I'm older than that, and it's like, okay, hold it. No. The other end's coming way too fast, so I'll just slow it down.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
No, but you're right. It's the idea of oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. See, that's age getting to me.
I do it all the time.
That's what I'll do. I'll write a script, a feature-length script about forgetfulness, and start off with the white page, and then just have 90 minutes of just that same page with maybe a word, erase, a minute of blank, and then word. No, that would be.
It depends on what the word is.
That would be an important art film.
Yeah.
It doesn't depend on what the
It
word
does
is.
depend on what the word is.
People are like, what's he going to write?
And the music.
And the music. Well, I've got somebody coming, and we're going to talk about music at one point.
Oh, that's good.
Because music's also an important part of it. I want to find, if anybody's listening out there, I'm looking for someone who does sound recording, not just to come work with me for sound recording, but let's talk about sound recording on the set. That thing I think would be fun. But AJ, let me tell you, this has been great so far. I love talking to you about this. I want to read your stuff because if you want me to, please send it.
I will.
Do you have any suggestions or tips or something for someone who wants to try their hand at writing a script?
One thing: read more than you write.
Okay, that's pretty.
Read as much as you can. There are some books out there that you can pick up. One of them is Save the Cat.
I've heard of that one. I don't think I've read that one yet.
Save the Cat is it helps you with storytelling a lot. It really does. I was surprised at that. And there's a few other books out there that you could. And there's another one. There's what is it? It's a short essay by Plato, and I can't remember the name of it right now. It's just gone from my head.
Oh,
But
well, if you remember it, let me know, and
will.
I'll put it up on the bottom of the screen here.
yeah,
But
I will as soon as we're done.
and the Stephen King
Stephen King on writing.
on writing,
I don't even know if it's in publication anymore.
you could probably find it.
Yeah,
I'm
if you can find
sure.
it. Yeah, I mean, it was at one point it was recommended reading for anyone who wanted to become a novelist.
Okay. Well, I like that. That is so good. You won't know what you don't know. You can see what other people's styles are. You can see how things are done, but also get information from people who are trying to impart it to you, and that's fantastic. I love it.
Some other parts of it, if you have trouble with dialogue, shut up and listen. Listen to people talking.
Yep.
Just don't participate because you feel like that you have to. Just absorb it. See how this person's tonal quality changes. See how this person responds to positive or negative, or responds to a story. Or pay attention to what people are saying and how they're saying it, and you'll be able to write dialogue eventually. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to hear the tone, and this is something that I do sometimes. If something sounds, I don't even know the word I'm trying to look for here. Not ineffective. If it sounds disingenuous,
Yes,
you
that's a
can
good word.
hear it, and you don't want your dialogue to sound disingenuous.
No, you want it. You want it to feel real, feel natural. Listen to dialogue. So I've done that before. Listen to people talking, and I've noticed that there are a lot of times when they don't finish a sentence, and the other person gets it, like completes it, in their mind, and then responds to the unspoken thought. And it's that's when two people have a connection, and it goes back and forth, and you get the gist of the conversation. You just don't get all the words, and that part is something that I find really annoying when I listen to dialogue on the screen. Well, yes, I must say every word as it was written. Don't you know?
Watch the movie MASH.
Okay.
The movie MASH.
Robert Altman.
Robert
yeah.
Altman. Everybody's talking at once.
Yes.
Everybody, because if you go to a party, nobody's taking turns.
No.
They're all talking at once.
Yeah, you're right. They are. And you can record it on set individually.
Yeah.
But then you think about it and you put it all together so you can bring up the words that you want to hear and bring down the words you don't. And it would get that talking over somebody thing that makes it again, that's
Yeah.
real. Keep it as real as possible. Don't try to make it as unreal as you can.
It's in writing. The second part of it, I said reading. The other part is write. Don't think about writing. Don't get ready to write. Don't think about getting ready to write. Write. Because if you're thinking about it, you're not writing. If you're getting ready to do it, you're not writing. All you're doing is just pushing it further and further out.
And they shouldn't worry about what they're writing at that point.
Not at all. Not at all. If you have a story to tell, it'll come out.
Okay, that's actually something that I found is very true. It'll, if it's there, it will appear.
Yeah.
Build it and they will come. Whatever. It's like that is true. And I think that's the problem I'm having with my story right now is that it's I've stopped writing. I haven't made the time. And make the time to write.
Right.
And once you've made that time, and sit down and just start writing. And it may be the first few paragraphs that come out are crap. Oh well. And then but keep going. And then it's like, oh wait a minute. But what if this happens? And then but if this happens, and what's this? And next thing you know, you're stuck, and you got a couple of paragraphs down, and it's awesome.
A few years ago, I wrote an entire 48 and trashed it.
Oh.
Because I put 2.5, 3 hours into writing this thing, and when I got to the end of it, I was like, "Well, this is crap. I don't even want to watch this.
Yep.
I don't want to see this."
I love it. Well, AJ, I want to say thank you again for coming out. I appreciate it. I wish I could see you at the mixer on Sunday, but I'm not going to be in town.
Yeah.
But that's all right. There'll be others.
Yes, there will be others. They're probably going to be showing quite a few 48-hour films.
Yep.
It's very important to see what the results are if you've never done one before, to see how it all comes together. Mm-hmm. And you can go to the 48 website and you can look at other films from other places too.
That's true. That's a good idea. And, so you have other ideas.
Right.
Well, that would be another thing is you talk about write, read,
Yeah.
know, but also, open your eyes and look and listen at what other people have done. The problem is you're never going to be able to sit down and enjoy a film again because you're going to start analyzing it, but that has a quality all its own.
Yeah.
It really
It's like watching a movie and saying, "Hey, I know where that was shot."
Perfect. I love it. I'd like to thank you all for joining us again for this episode of Anecdotes. I really do appreciate it. See y'all next time.
Thanks to our sponsors, La Film Studios and the Abita Springs International Film Festival. If you want to sponsor the Anecdotes video podcast or be a guest, please email us at anecdotes@lafilm.net. Anecdotes is recorded in the 36 and 59 studio in beautiful Abita Springs, Louisiana.